The dashboard clock read 12:47 a.m. when Grayson Caldwell pulled his aging Honda Accord to the curb outside the Meridian Grand Hotel. The night air hung thick and humid, the kind of oppressive Chicago heat that made shirts stick to skin and turned every breath into effort. He killed the engine and stepped out, his knees protesting the way they always did now. 36 years old, and his body already kept a detailed record of every hard landing, every forced march, every sacrifice from his 12 years in the Army. Captain Grayson Caldwell. That's who he used to be. A man who commanded respect with a single look. A man who led soldiers through situations that would break lesser men. Now he drove strangers around the city for money. He glanced at the photo clipped to his dashboard. Rosie, 7 years old, gap-toothed smile, eyes that looked exactly like her mother's had looked, back when her mother was still alive to look at anything. Everything he did was for that little girl. Every late-night shift, every mile driven, every moment of exhaustion pushed through because giving up wasn't an option. The passenger door opened and Mrs. Okonkwo emerged with her usual warm smile. She was a tiny woman in her 60s, silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun, still wearing her hospital scrubs from the night shift. She pressed a $20 bill into his hand before he could protest. "You have a little girl to raise, Grayson. Don't argue with an old woman who knows what she's talking about." He wanted to refuse. The app had already charged her. But Mrs. Okonkwo had that look in her eyes, the one that reminded him of his own mother, the one that said arguing was pointless. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Your wife would be proud of you, you know, the way you're fighting for that child every single day." Grayson felt his throat tighten. Meredith. 3 years gone, and the mention of her still hit like a punch to the chest. Cancer had taken her slowly, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but memories and a little girl who still sometimes cried for her mommy in the middle of the night. Before she died, Meredith had gripped his hand with what little strength she had left. Her voice was barely a whisper, but her words were fierce. "Promise me something, Gray. Promise me you won't just survive after I'm gone. Promise me you'll actually live. Find joy again. Find love again. Don't let grief become the only thing you are." He was still working on keeping that promise. Most days, survival was hard enough. A sound cut through the night air. Sharp, terrified, unmistakable. A woman's scream. Grayson's head snapped toward the source. Across the street, maybe 40 yards away, a scene was unfolding under the harsh glow of the streetlights. A woman in a blue dress, on the ground, a figure looming over her, dark clothing, face covered by a ski mask despite the summer heat. The attacker was yanking at her purse while she held on desperately, her screams splitting the night. Mrs. Okonkwo gasped beside him. Grayson's mind went calm, crystal clear, the same clarity that had saved his life and the lives of his soldiers more times than he could count. Time seemed to slow as he assessed the situation. The attacker had his back to them. The woman was fighting but losing. No police in sight. No other pedestrians. No help coming. "Call 911, he said to Mrs. Okonkwo. His voice was steady, authoritative. The voice of Captain Caldwell, back from the grave. Then he was moving. His feet hit the pavement in a dead sprint. His body remembered the training even if his knees wished it would forget. The distance closed fast. 30 yards. 20. 10. The woman's scream came again, higher pitched this time, edged with real terror as the attacker succeeded in ripping the purse from her grip. The man straightened up, triumphant, the stolen bag clutched in his gloved hands. He glanced around, checking for witnesses. That's when he spotted Grayson charging across the street like a freight train with a personal vendetta. The attacker's body language shifted instantly from predator to prey. He turned to run. He didn't make it 3 steps. Grayson hit him with 12 years of military training behind the impact. The tackle was textbook. the kind of thing drilled into him during basic training and perfected through 1,000 hours of hand-to-hand combat courses. He wrapped his arms around the attacker's midsection, lifted him slightly off the ground, and drove him down hard onto the pavement. The impact knocked the wind out of both of them, but Grayson recovered faster. Years of muscle memory took over. He secured the attacker's right arm, twisting it up behind his back in a control hold. The stolen purse skittered across the concrete, its contents spilling out in a trail of keys, a smartphone, and scattered makeup. "Stay down," Grayson growled, applying just enough pressure to make his point absolutely clear. The attacker bucked once, trying to throw him off. Grayson had 50 pounds on him and a lifetime of experience in how to control a hostile combatant. He pressed down harder. Then the calculation changed. With a desperate twist, the attacker wrenched free, leaving his jacket behind in Grayson's grip, and scrambled to his feet. He was running before Grayson could react, stumbling into the dark alley beside the hotel. Grayson could have pursued. Every instinct screamed at him to chase, to finish what he'd started. But the woman was still on the ground. She was the priority now, not revenge. He let the attacker go and turned back to where she sat on the pavement, her blue dress torn at the shoulder, one expensive shoe missing, her eyes wide with shock. "You okay, ma'am?" She stared at him like he was something impossible, something that couldn't exist in the world she knew. Her dark hair had come loose from whatever elegant style it had been in, falling in waves around her face. Even in shock, even sitting on dirty concrete with mascara smudged under her eyes, there was something striking about her. Not just beautiful, something more. A presence. The kind of woman who commanded attention when she walked into any room. "You stopped him," she whispered. "You actually stopped him. Let's get you up off this street." He extended his hand. She took it, and he pulled her to her feet with gentle firmness. She swayed slightly, and his other hand automatically went to her elbow to steady her. Up close, he noticed things. The silk dress, even torn, was clearly designer. The kind of outfit that cost more than his monthly rent. Her jewelry was simple but real gold. The purse now lying on the pavement was Hermes. This woman had money. Serious money. Her shoes were destroyed. One heel snapped clean off, the other missing entirely. She couldn't walk. Without thinking, Grayson crouched down, his back to her. "Climb on. I'll carry you inside." "What? No, I couldn't possibly." "Ma'am, your feet are torn up and you're shaking hard enough to rattle your teeth. Let me help you." A pause. A moment of internal debate he could feel even without seeing her face. Then small hands gripped his shoulders, and he felt her weight settle onto his back. She was lighter than he expected, almost fragile feeling, despite her height. He carried her toward the hotel entrance, her arms around his neck, her breath warm against his ear. "I don't even know your name," she said quietly. "Grayson Caldwell." "Victoria," she replied. "Victoria Ashford." The name meant nothing to him in that moment. Just another person he'd helped on another late night in a city full of strangers who usually looked the other way. They reached the hotel entrance, and the concierge came rushing out, his face white with panic. "Miss Ashford! Oh my God, what happened? Are you hurt? Should I call an ambulance?" Miss Ashford, the concierge knew her well, by the look of absolute terror on his face. Grayson set her down gently on one of the plush lobby couches. She clutched her recovered purse to her chest like a lifeline. "I'm fine, Martin, or I will be." She managed to steady her voice. "This man saved me from being robbed, possibly worse." The concierge turned to Grayson with profound gratitude. "Sir, I cannot thank you enough. If there's anything the hotel can do, just make sure she's okay. The police are on their way." Grayson glanced at his phone. Already past 1 in the morning. He'd promised Camille, his sister, that he'd be home by 2. She had work in the morning, couldn't stay all night watching Rosie. He should leave as soon as he gave his statement. But when he looked back at Victoria Ashford, she was staring at him with that same intense focus, like she was trying to memorize his face or figure out some puzzle only she could see. "Please don't leave yet," she said softly. "Not until the police come. I'd feel safer if you stayed." So he stayed. The police arrived within 10 minutes. Officers Patterson and Mills were thorough, professional, asking detailed questions about the attacker's appearance and escape route. They bagged the abandoned jacket as evidence, hoping for prints or DNA. "You did good work tonight, Mr. Caldwell," Officer Patterson said as she finished her notes. "Quick thinking, appropriate force. If everyone who witnessed a crime responded like you did, our jobs would be a lot easier." "Just did what anyone should do," Grayson replied. "No," Victoria's voice cut through firmly. "You did what almost no one would do. Most people would have looked away. You didn't hesitate for even a second." Through it all, Grayson found himself studying Victoria Ashford. Despite everything she'd just been through, she held herself together with remarkable composure, answering questions clearly, providing details. This was a woman who was used to handling crises. "You served," she said suddenly, during a quiet moment after the officers stepped away. "Military. I can tell by the way you moved out there." "Army, 12 years. Rose to captain." She nodded as if that confirmed something she'd already suspected. "Why did you leave?" It was a personal question from a complete stranger, but something about the way she asked it, genuinely curious rather than just making conversation, made him answer honestly. "My wife got sick. Cancer. She needed me home, not deployed halfway around the world. So I resigned my commission and came back." Victoria's expression softened with immediate understanding. "Is she?" "3 years ago, she fought hard, harder than anyone I've ever known. But in the end, the cancer was stronger." A long pause. Then Victoria reached out and touched his arm, just briefly, but the gesture held real compassion. "I'm sorry," she said, and he could tell she actually meant it. When the police finally finished and headed out, Grayson stood to leave. It was well past 2 now. Camille would be worried. "Thank you," Victoria said, "for everything tonight. I know I keep saying it, but I truly mean it. Just doing what anyone should do." She pulled a business card from her recovered purse and pressed it into his hand. "If you ever need anything, and I mean anything at all, please don't hesitate." He glanced at the card. Victoria Ashford, Chief Executive Officer, Ashford Holdings, CEO. She was a CEO of Ashford Holdings, a company he'd actually heard of, a company worth billions. He looked up at her with new eyes. This woman, who'd been trembling on the pavement 20 minutes ago, ran one of the largest investment firms in Chicago. "Get some rest, Miss Ashford." "Victoria, please. After tonight, I think we're past formalities." "Victoria." He tucked the card into his pocket. "Take care of yourself." He walked out into the humid night air, got into his Honda, and drove home through empty streets. That night, after checking on a peacefully sleeping Rosie and sending his sister home with exhausted thanks, Grayson sat on his couch, holding the business card Victoria had given him. He looked at the photo of Meredith on the bookshelf, the one from their wedding day, both of them so young and so certain that life would be kind. "What do you think?" he asked the empty room. "Crazy night, huh?" The photo didn't answer. But somehow, sitting there in the quiet, he could almost feel Meredith smiling. His last thought before exhaustion finally claimed him was of Victoria Ashford's eyes, the way she'd looked at him when she handed over that card, like he was someone worth remembering. He fell asleep thinking he'd probably never see her again. Morning came too early, announced by Rosie jumping on his bed with all the energy of a caffeinated tornado. "Daddy, wake up! You promised pancakes." Grayson groaned. but couldn't help smiling. This was his favorite alarm clock in the entire world. "Give me 10 minutes, princess." "5 minutes." "7. Deal." She raced out of the room, and Grayson hauled himself to the shower. Every muscle ached from last night's tackle. He'd have bruises for a week at least. But as hot water pounded his shoulders, he found his mind drifting back to Victoria Ashford. He shook his head firmly. Ridiculous. She was a CEO of a billion-dollar company. He was a rideshare driver who couldn't afford new shoes for his daughter without picking up extra night shifts. Their worlds didn't intersect except by accident. He was halfway through making pancakes, Rosie chattering beside him about something that happened at school when his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Caldwell, this is Victoria Ashford. We met last night." He nearly dropped the spatula into the batter. "Miss Ashford, I mean, Victoria, are you okay?" "I'm fine, thanks to you." Her voice was completely different now. Confident. Commanding. This was the CEO speaking. "I hope I'm not disturbing your Saturday morning." "Not at all. I'm making breakfast for my daughter." "How old is she?" 7. Her name is Rosie." A warm note entered Victoria's voice. "That's a beautiful name." "Her mother chose it." A brief pause. Then Victoria spoke again, her tone shifting to business. "Mr. Caldwell, I have a proposition for you. A serious one. I'd like to offer you a job interview. Head of security for Ashford Holdings." Grayson's hand tightened on the phone. "The position pays $120,000 annually, plus full benefits. Health insurance, retirement matching, 3 weeks vacation to start. I'd like you to come to my office Monday morning at 10. $120,000, the number echoed in his head. That was more than he'd made in the last 2 years combined. It was new shoes for Rosie whenever she needed them, a better apartment, an actual future instead of constant survival. "I'll be there." "Excellent. I'll email you the details tonight." After she hung up, Grayson stood motionless in his kitchen, phone still pressed to his ear, mind reeling. "Daddy!" Rosie appeared in the doorway, her hair a tangled mess of bedhead. "Who was that?" "Someone who might change our lives, princess." Rosie tilted her head, studying him with eyes so much like Meredith's, it sometimes hurt to look at them. "Is she nice?" "I think so." "Good." Rosie nodded with 7-year-old solemnity. "Mommy always said you need nice people around you, Daddy. She said nice people help us remember how to smile when we forget." Grayson pulled his daughter into a tight hug, burying his face in her tangled hair. "When did you get so smart?" "I was born smart. Mommy said so all the time." Monday morning found Grayson standing outside the Ashford Holdings Tower, his stomach tight with nerves he hadn't felt since his first combat deployment. He was wearing his only suit, the dark one he'd worn to Meredith's funeral, the one that had hung untouched in his closet for 3 years. The building rose 30 stories into the Chicago sky, all glass and steel and corporate power. This was a world he'd never belonged to, a world of expense accounts and corner offices and people who'd never worried about paying an electric bill. But Meredith's voice echoed in his memory, something she'd told him years ago when he doubted himself before a difficult mission. "You belong anywhere you decide to belong, Gray. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you different." He walked through the revolving doors. The lobby screamed wealth and power, marble floors polished to mirrors, original art on the walls that probably cost more than he'd earned in his lifetime, security guards in uniforms that cost more than his suit. "Grayson Caldwell for Victoria Ashford." The guard checked his computer, and his demeanor shifted to respectful. "Miss Ashford is expecting you, sir. 28th floor. Her assistant will meet you at the elevator." The elevator was glass on one side, showing the city shrinking below him as he rose. By the time it stopped, Chicago spread out beneath him like a map of possibilities. On the 28th floor, A woman with perfectly styled gray hair waited for him. Her name tag read, Constance Webb. "Mr. Caldwell, welcome to Ashford Holdings. Please follow me." She led him down a hallway lined with offices where people who looked important did things that seemed urgent. Everyone moved with purpose. Everyone looked like they belonged. Victoria's office was at the end. Corner position, floor-to-ceiling windows on two sides offering a panoramic view of the city she'd conquered. But Grayson barely noticed the view. Victoria stood behind her desk, wearing a charcoal gray suit that transformed her completely. This wasn't the shaken woman in the torn blue dress. This was CEO Victoria Ashford. Cold, commanding. Her eyes could freeze a boardroom solid. "Mr. Caldwell, thank you for coming." She came around the desk to shake his hand. Firm grip. All business. "Please sit." She gestured to chairs arranged by the windows. A more casual setup than her imposing desk would have provided. "I want to be completely clear about something before we begin," she said, meeting his eyes directly. "What happened Friday night has no bearing on this interview. If I didn't think you were genuinely qualified for this position, we wouldn't be having this conversation." "Understood. Good." She opened a folder containing his resume. "I've reviewed your background thoroughly. 12 years Army, rose to captain, multiple commendations for leadership under fire. Since leaving the service, you've done security consulting and supplemented with rideshare driving." She looked up. "What you haven't done is corporate security. So tell me, why should I trust you with 300 employees and billions in assets?" Grayson sat up straighter. This was a test. He'd faced harder ones with bullets flying. "Because everything I've done for 15 years has been about protecting people. In the Army, I kept soldiers alive through 3 combat deployments. I made decisions under fire that saved lives. I know how to assess threats, plan for contingencies, and respond when things go wrong." He paused. "And I'm hungry, not for power or status, but for the chance to do work that matters again. To use my skills for something more than just getting by." Victoria studied him for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression. "You remind me of myself," she said quietly, "fighting every day to prove you deserve to be somewhere." "The salary is $120,000 annually," she continued, returning to business. "Full benefits, signing bonus of $10,000 if you accept." Grayson tried not to react visibly, but his heart was hammering. "When would I start?" 2 weeks. That gives you time to transition and arrange childcare for your daughter." She stood and extended her hand. "Welcome to Ashford Holdings, Mr. Caldwell." 4 weeks into his new position, Grayson had transformed the company's security protocols from adequate to exceptional. He worked with military precision, implementing new systems, training the 8-person team, earning respect through competence. Franklin Hayes, the veteran former cop who'd been interim head of security, became his trusted second-in-command. But it was the unexpected moments that truly changed everything. Like the evening Victoria asked him to discuss security upgrades over dinner at a restaurant called Tempest. The place was upscale but not pretentious. Leather booths, soft lighting, the kind of establishment where important conversations happened. "Tell me about Meredith," Victoria said over their second glass of wine. The question caught him off guard, but something about the way she asked, with genuine warmth rather than idle curiosity, made him want to answer. "She was everything I wasn't, outgoing where I was reserved, optimistic where I was practical. She could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with 10 new friends." He stared into his wine glass. "When she got sick, she never complained. Not once. Not even at the end. When the pain was unbearable. She was more worried about me and Rosie than herself." "She sounds remarkable." "She was." He looked up. "She made me promise something before she died. She told me to let grief become my strength, not my prison. To find a way to really live again, not just survive." Victoria's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "My turn." she said quietly. You shared your story. Now I'll share mine. She took a deep breath. I aged out of the foster care system at 18 with $500 and a high school diploma. No family, no safety net. Nothing but a chip on my shoulder the size of Texas. Grayson listened without interrupting. I put myself through community college working 3 jobs, then state university, then business school. Every single step of the way, people told me I wouldn't make it, that girls from my background don't become CEOs. She smiled, but there was an edge of old pain in it. So I proved every last one of them wrong, built this empire from nothing. But somewhere along the way, I forgot how to just exist, how to be a person instead of a position. That sounds exhausting. It is. She met his eyes. You're the first person I've ever told the complete story to, about the foster homes, about where I really came from. Why me? Because you told me about Meredith. That kind of honesty deserves honesty in return. They talked until the restaurant closed, about loss and survival and the exhausting work of moving forward when everything in you wants to stay frozen in the past. When they finally left, something had shifted between them. Not romance, not yet, but connection, the recognition of one wounded soul by another. A week later, Victoria met Rosie for the first time. It was unplanned. Victoria stopped by Grayson's apartment to discuss a security matter, and Rosie was there, just home from school, still wearing her backpack. The 7-year-old studied Victoria with intense, unblinking curiosity. Are you my daddy's boss? I am. He says you're really smart. Like, really, really smart. Victoria's lips twitched with amusement. He said that? Uh-huh. He also says you work too much. Rosie tilted her head. Just like he used to before Mommy got sick. Then Rosie said something that made Victoria's breath catch in her chest. You know what my mommy used to say. She said people who work too much are just scared to sit still. Because when you sit still, you have to feel things. And feeling things is scary. Victoria felt like she'd been struck by lightning. A 7-year-old had just articulated something she'd been running from her entire adult life. Your mommy sounds very wise. She was the wisest. Rosie's smile was pure sunshine. She's in heaven now, but I think she'd like you. You do? Uh-huh. Because you have brave eyes. Mommy always said brave people recognize each other, and Daddy recognized you right away. Victoria drove home that evening with Rosie's words echoing in her head. People who work too much are just scared to sit still. 7 years old, and she'd seen right through every wall Victoria had ever built. For the first time in years, something cracked inside her. Not breaking, opening. Maybe that's what healing actually looked like. 6 weeks after Grayson started at Ashford Holdings, the threat emerged from the shadows. It was a Tuesday afternoon, ordinary in every way, until his desk phone rang from an internal extension he didn't recognize. Tell Ashford she can't hide behind bodyguards forever. The voice was electronically distorted, mechanical, menacing. What she took from me, I'll take from her, and everyone she cares about. The line went dead. Grayson was on his feet instantly, military training flooding back. He called Franklin Hayes. Lock down the building, now. Nobody in or out without my clearance. In Victoria's office minutes later, he delivered the news with controlled urgency. Her face went pale, but she held steady. This was a woman who'd faced plenty of battles. There's something I didn't tell the police that night, she admitted. The man who attacked me. He knew my name before I said it. He said, Miss Ashford, your company owes me. They compiled a list of potential threats, over 30 names. Disgruntled investors who'd lost money, fired employees, business rivals she'd outmaneuvered. But one name kept surfacing. Dominic Harrington, CEO of Harrington Capital. Victoria had beaten him on the Henderson acquisition just weeks before the attack. a deal worth $200 million. Harrington's company was now circling the drain of bankruptcy. Grayson spent 3 nights digging deeper. He called in favors from Army contacts, former intelligence officers who knew how to trace money and find patterns invisible to normal eyes. The picture that emerged was damning. Harrington had a brother named Bennett, criminal record for stalking and harassment, recently released, and Bennett had rented an unmarked white van, the same van captured on traffic cameras outside Ashford Holdings for 47 minutes before the threatening phone call. Then Grayson found the smoking gun, a wire transfer, $50,000 from Dominic Harrington's personal account to his brother Bennett, dated exactly 1 week before the street attack on Victoria. The memo line read simply, "Consulting Services." Franklin Hayes looked at the evidence and whistled low. "This is more than enough for the FBI." "Not yet." Grayson's jaw was tight. "I want to nail both brothers. I want them to have absolutely nowhere to run." The threat escalated 1 week later. Grayson found it in his apartment mailbox. A photograph. Rosie, at her school playground. Taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Handwritten on the back in neat block letters. "Pretty little thing. Would be a shame if something happened to her." He stood in his living room, hands shaking. Not with fear, with rage. Victoria came immediately when he called. She found him sitting on the floor, the photograph clutched in his white-knuckled grip, his eyes red. "This is my fault," she whispered, her voice breaking. "If I hadn't brought you into this, if I hadn't—" "No." His voice was steel wrapped in ice. "Dominic Harrington just made the biggest mistake of his miserable life. He threatened my daughter." Rosie appeared in the doorway, clutching her stuffed bear, awakened by the voices. "Daddy, is something wrong?" He went to her immediately, kneeling to her level, forcing his voice to gentle. "There's a bad person who's trying to scare us, Princess. But I need you to know something. I promise you, I will never let anything happen to you. Do you believe me?" Rosie looked at him with eyes far too old for 7 years. "You know what, Daddy? Mommy told me once that brave isn't about not being scared. Brave is when you're really scared, but you do the right thing anyway." She reached out and took Victoria's hand, surprising everyone. "You're brave too, Miss Victoria. I can tell. You're scared right now, but you're still here. That's what brave looks like." Victoria felt tears streaming down her face. She'd built walls her entire life to keep people out, and a 7-year-old had just walked right through them. FBI agent Daniels reviewed the evidence in a secure conference room the next morning. "We have enough to arrest both Harringtons," she confirmed, "but to make the charges stick permanently, to ensure they can't lawyer their way out, we need to catch them exposed. Publicly, undeniably." Victoria's jaw set with determination. "The annual shareholder meeting is in 3 days. 500 people, full media coverage, every business reporter in Chicago. You want to confront him there? In front of everyone. I want to end this. Completely. Once and for all." Grayson shook his head. "It's too risky. You'll be completely exposed." Victoria met his eyes. "I won't be alone. You'll be right there. I trust you with my life, Grayson. I have since the night you tackled a stranger to save me." The night before the shareholder meeting, they stood on Victoria's balcony, looking out over the glittering Chicago skyline. "Are you scared?" she asked quietly. "Terrified," he admitted. "For you, for Rosie, for everything that could go wrong tomorrow." Victoria moved closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "Meredith chose right," she said softly, "when she chose you. She knew exactly what kind of man you are." He looked at her. In the city lights, she was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache with something he thought he'd buried with his wife. "Victoria, when this is over." "I know," she smiled. "Wrong time, wrong circumstances. But when this ends, I'd like to find out what we could be, if you're willing." Grayson looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "When I was deployed overseas," he said quietly, "I learned that you don't wait for the perfect moment, because perfect moments don't exist. There's only now." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know something." He took her face gently in his hands. "You're not just someone I'm protecting anymore. You're someone I'm falling for. And I don't want to wait until this is over to tell you that." "Then don't wait," she whispered. He kissed her there on the balcony, with the city lights sparkling below them and tomorrow's battle waiting in the darkness. It wasn't the perfect moment. It wasn't how he'd imagined starting again. But it was their moment, and that made it perfect enough. The shareholder meeting filled the grand ballroom of the Ashford Holdings Tower with 500 people. Investors, board members, media, cameras everywhere capturing every moment. Dominic Harrington sat in the front row, perfectly confident in his $5,000 suit, silver hair immaculately styled, the picture of corporate success. No one looking at him would suspect anything. Grayson stood at the side of the room, every sense on high alert, watching everything. Victoria took the stage, began her presentation on company performance, her voice steady and commanding. Then she stopped, changed direction entirely. "Before I conclude today, I need to address something critically important, something that affects the security of everyone in this company." The room went utterly still. "Over the past several weeks, I have been the target of threats and physical intimidation. Someone in this very room believes that destroying me personally is the answer to their business problems." She pressed the remote, the massive screen behind her filled with surveillance footage. Bennett Harrington making the threatening phone call to Grayson's office, parking his van outside the building, photographing a 7-year-old girl at her elementary school playground. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Dominic Harrington." Victoria's voice cut through the shocked murmurs like a blade. "You hired your own brother to stalk me, to attack me on the street, to threaten a 7-year-old child, because you lost a business deal." At the same moment Victoria spoke his name, 2 FBI agents near the exit grabbed a man trying to slip quietly out the back door. Bennett Harrington, the brother who'd done all the dirty work. He struggled for a moment, then went limp as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "Both of them," Victoria said, her voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "The mastermind and the accomplice. Together at last." Dominic shot to his feet, face purple with rage. "This is ridiculous. Defamation. I'll sue you for—" "You can try." Victoria's eyes were steel. "But I have recordings. I have witnesses. I have bank transfers. And I have the FBI." Agent Daniel stepped forward from the crowd, badge raised high. "Dominic Harrington, you're under arrest for stalking, criminal threatening, conspiracy to commit assault, and half a dozen other charges we'll discuss downtown. You have the right to remain silent." Harrington tried to run. Grayson was faster. He blocked the man's path with every inch of the soldier he'd once been and still was. "You threatened my daughter," he said quietly, just loud enough for Harrington to hear. "That was your first mistake. Your last mistake was thinking you'd get away with it." FBI agents moved in. Handcuffs clicked around Dominic Harrington's wrists. Right there on stage, in front of 500 witnesses, dozens of cameras, every business reporter in Chicago. Justice served publicly and completely. Later in the quiet aftermath, Victoria found Grayson standing alone by the windows. "It's done," she said. "Is it?" He was still processing everything. "The threat is gone, but what now?" Victoria took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Now we figure out the rest, together, if you still want that." He looked at her. This woman who had survived foster care and built an empire from nothing, who had been attacked and threatened and stalked, and still stood tall. "Together," he agreed. "I definitely still want that." That night, after Rosie was finally asleep, they sat on Grayson's couch. The first truly quiet moment without any threat hanging over their heads. I haven't done this in a long time, Grayson admitted. The relationship thing, not since Meredith. Neither have I, Victoria smiled softly. I've never let anyone get close enough to matter. So we're both terrible at this. Maybe that's exactly why we fit together. He took her hand. Meredith made me promise something before she died. She said to find someone who makes me want tomorrow to come. Not just survive it, but actually want it. His eyes met hers. I didn't really understand what she meant. Not until I met you. Victoria's breath caught. And now? And now you make me want tomorrow to come, Victoria. You make me want a lot of tomorrows. He kissed her gently, like she was something precious he'd been waiting his whole life to find. I'm falling for you, he whispered against her lips. I didn't plan to. I didn't think I could, but I am. Good. Her smile was radiant. Because I fell first. The night you tackled a criminal to save a stranger you'd never met. That's the moment I knew you were different from anyone I'd ever encountered. The next morning, Rosie found them making breakfast together in the small kitchen. She didn't look surprised. She looked deeply pleased, like something she'd been waiting for had finally happened. I knew it, she announced from the doorway. Knew what, princess? That Miss Victoria was going to stay. I knew it the first time I met her. Victoria knelt down to Rosie's level. How did you know that? Rosie tilted her head, her expression suddenly wise far beyond her 7 years. Because Mommy told me once that when the right person finally comes, Daddy's eyes will smile again. Not just his mouth pretending, his actual eyes. She looked at her father with complete certainty. Your eyes have been smiling ever since Miss Victoria started coming around, Daddy. Real smiles, not the pretend ones. Grayson felt his throat close completely. Meredith had known. Somehow, impossibly, she'd seen this moment coming and had prepared their daughter for it. Is it okay with you? Victoria asked Rosie carefully. If I stay? If I become part of your lives? Rosie threw her small arms around Victoria in a fierce hug. It's more than okay, she declared. It's perfect. It's exactly right. 1 year later, they returned to the corner where everything began. Grayson, Victoria, and Rosie, standing on the same sidewalk where a scream in the night had changed all of their lives forever. Rosie, now 8, skipped ahead on the pavement, full of energy and joy. This is where you guys met. This is where Daddy saved me, Victoria said, squeezing Grayson's hand. He shook his head with a slight smile. Actually, this is where she saved me. I just didn't know it yet. Victoria raised her left hand. On her ring finger, a diamond caught the afternoon sunlight and threw tiny rainbows across the pavement. Rosie ran back to them, grabbing both their hands at once. Can we get ice cream now? It's our Saturday tradition. Absolutely, Princess. They walked together. 3 people, a family forged from tragedy and hope. Victoria leaned close to Grayson. You know what Rosie asked me last night when we were reading her bedtime story? What? She asked if she could call me Mom sometimes. She said her real mom is in heaven watching over them, but maybe she could have an Earth mom too. Someone here to hug her and help with homework and all the everyday things. Grayson stopped walking. His eyes burned with sudden tears. What did you say? I said I would be incredibly honored if her dad was okay with it. He pulled her close and kissed her right there on the sidewalk, not caring who might be watching. Meredith would have loved you, he said when they finally parted. She would have said, finally, you found her? I knew you would. That evening, as the sun set over Chicago in streaks of orange and gold, the 3 of them sat on a park bench sharing ice cream. Rosie had chocolate smeared across her chin and didn't care at all. Victoria was laughing at something Grayson had said, and Grayson found himself thinking about how it all began. A $47 fare, a scream cutting through the darkness, a choice made in a split second without any thought of consequences. He hadn't known then that he was running toward his entire future. He'd just known that someone needed help, and he couldn't look away. Maybe that was how the best things in life actually worked. You didn't plan them, or earn them, or deserve them. You just showed up when it mattered, and everything else followed. Rosie tugged on his sleeve, pulling him back to the present. "Daddy?" "Yeah, Princess. I think Mommy sent her to us." She pointed at Victoria with her ice cream cone, getting chocolate on Victoria's sleeve. "I think Mommy knew we needed someone to help us smile again, and she found Miss Victoria for us from heaven." Grayson felt tears sliding down his cheeks. He didn't try to hide them. He looked at Victoria, who was crying too, her mascara running, and she'd never looked more beautiful to him. "I think you might be right, Rosie." "I know I'm right." The 8-year-old nodded with complete, unshakable certainty. "Mommy always said she'd take care of us forever, even from heaven. This is her keeping that promise." Victoria reached over and pulled Rosie into a hug, ice cream and chocolate smears and all. "Then I'll have to thank her every day," Victoria whispered, "for trusting me with you too, for letting me be part of this family." Grayson wrapped his arms around both of them. His daughter, his future wife, his family, built from broken pieces, held together by love, made stronger by everything they'd survived. Meredith had made him promise to live again, to find joy, to open his heart. It had taken 3 years and a scream in the darkness and a woman who needed saving. But he'd finally kept that promise. Some people believe that when you lose someone you love, your heart closes forever, that there's only room for one great love in a single lifetime. But Grayson Caldwell learned something different. He learned that love doesn't replace what was lost. It grows alongside it, like a garden where new flowers bloom right next to the ones planted long ago. He learned that brave isn't the absence of fear. Brave is being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. He learned that the broken pieces of a life can be put back together into something whole and beautiful if you're just willing to try. Meredith knew all of that. That's why she made him promise to keep living. And finally, after 3 years of just surviving, Grayson Caldwell was truly living again. Ready to love completely. Ready for all the tomorrows still waiting to unfold. Ready to be the guardian of his family's happiness, now and forever.